CNN Headline News, I'm David Goodnow. An abortion rights group says it has never happened before in America. A Florida doctor was gunned down today during a demonstration at a newly opened clinic. The group that sponsored the protest said it hopes the doctor had a chance to repent before he died. More from Mark Leff.
It happened outside Pensacola's newest abortion clinic, where about a dozen anti-abortion activists from a group called Rescue America were demonstrating.
He was supposed to meet us out there, and the first time I saw him was when he came around from the back of the clinic and walked up to a police officer and said, "I've just shot Dr. Gunn."
31-year-old Michael Griffin gave up immediately, about 2 hours before 47-year-old physician David Gunn died.
The guy, you know, he just went up, chased the doctor there, and just shot him point blank, right up here.
Dr. Gunn lived in southeast Alabama, where he had a clinic, and recently opened one in Pensacola. Just over 8 years ago, anti-abortion activists firebombed other doctors' offices and clinics in Pensacola. 4 people were later convicted in connection with those incidents. 2 years ago in California, anti-abortion activist Raymond Bodine walked into a Visalia courtroom and fired a shot that just missed a judge who had ordered a woman to have a birth control device implanted. Bodine was convicted of attempted murder. Just last week, more than 50 members of Congress demanded the FBI investigate a series of acid attacks on abortion clinics last year.
A very small minority in this country is turning increasingly to terrorism to achieve their anti-choice goals.
But while demonstrations and attacks on abortion clinics have occasionally turned violent, the National Abortion Federation says what happened in Pensacola is the first killing of a doctor, nurse, or patient at a U.S. clinic. One abortion rights group is already accusing law enforcement officials of being lax in responding to what it calls this terrorism. The anti-abortion group that organized the Pensacola demonstration and says Michael Griffin was not a member called Dr. Gunn's death unfortunate, but said mothers would have been put at risk and babies would have died.
I think you'll see more of this kind of stuff. More clinic bombings, more violence, because there's talk right now making blockading the clinic entrance in the state of Florida a felony. And you start doing that, people just turn to other ways to do it. They won't quit.
Rescue America is already soliciting donations for the wife and children of Michael Griffin, who now faces murder charges, but is not offering any help to the doctor's family because it doesn't believe they'd have any financial problems. Mark Leff, CNN, reporting.
In Los Angeles, Rodney King took the stand for a second day in the civil rights trial of 4 policemen who beat him. During cross-examination, King sounded confused at times about whether the officers made racial slurs. Yesterday, King said they did. The defense pointed out King did not mention racial slurs after the beating or to a grand jury.
I understand that the entire community is focused on this case, wanting to know whether or not there was a racial abuse out there. I mean, Mr. King's got to know that. He came out during the riots and asked, can we all get along? This is not lost on this witness, and yet he is still willing to stand up in this courtroom before a jury and say, they said the word nigger, and then say, well, maybe it was killer. I'm not sure. But then he keeps repeating it. Now, why is he doing that? Because he has a stake in the outcome. That's why.
King said he did not mention racial slurs before because his mother said that would only inflame tensions. In Florida, the retrial of a Hispanic police officer charged in the deaths of 2 black motorcyclists has been moved from Tallahassee to Orlando. William Lozano was originally convicted of manslaughter in 1989, but a retrial was ordered after a judge ruled rioting after the incident may have pressured the guilty verdict. Since that time, the venue has been changed 3 times. Federal investigators have arrested a second man in connection with the bombing of the World Trade Center. 25-year-old Nidal Ayad, a chemical engineer and an American citizen, was arrested this morning in New Jersey. FBI officials think he may have helped build the bomb at a warehouse rented by Mohammed Salameh. Salameh, the first man arrested in the case, is a friend of Ayad, and officials say the 2 men shared a joint bank account. Thursday's New York Times reports FBI officials think at least $8,000 is wired into that account from Europe in recent months. They say that may prove a link to some international financing. For the second time in as many days, a banner was displayed outside the armed compound of religious cult leader David Koresh today. Quote, send in the CFA and Don Stewart. apparently refers to a citizens group and a negotiator. Also today, federal agents arrested a man who had left the compound since the original gun battle February 28th. He's accused of firing at police officers. The hometown military base sometimes is the base of the local economy in many American cities. Brian Cabell reports on how one city is bracing for upcoming closures.
4 p.m. at the Charleston Naval Shipyard. Workers head home from their jobs. Jobs that have long provided government stability and security. Now there's disturbing talk that the shipyard is on the military's so-called hit list.
Say they're going to close, then they say they haven't put it on the list. They say it is on the list. Oh, all we can do is write letters and hope and pray.
It's such a big part of the community here in Charleston. This shipyard has been here for many years.
92 years to be precise. And it's more than the shipyard apparently on the hit list. This is home port for 52 ships and submarines. It's also home for a naval supply center, a weapons station, and an electronic systems center. All are in jeopardy. That's a total of 36,000 Navy jobs, military and civilian, with a combined payroll exceeding $1 billion a year.
If all those cuts were to happen, we would have an economic depression in our community that would rival the Great Depression.
The rumored hit list has shaken this charming old world city to its core. The elimination of 36,000 Navy positions and the expected ripple effect on the rest of the economy could mean a total loss in the metropolitan area of 1/4 of all the jobs. Among those facing job loss, Dave and Linda Jordan.
I expected to work for the government until I retired. And that was my first reaction, was worried about, what am I going to do? I'm middle-aged now.
This not only has an impact on me and Linda, but on the kids, and of course her parents and her sisters and brothers that live in the area. It's ripping the families apart.
Charleston isn't scheduled for closure yet. The hit list hasn't been released. But naval personnel in the city of Charleston are preparing for the worst and preparing to do battle with policymakers in Washington, D.C. Charleston, of course, is not alone in this battle. Other bases in other communities are facing closure, and their attitude is essentially the same. Let's cut government operations, cut expenditures, but let's do it somewhere else. Brian Cabell, CNN, Charleston.
Both sides in the Bosnian conflict are having trouble with the international peace plan that would divide old Yugoslavia into 10 provinces. Now, Bosnia's envoy to the United Nations said his government wants it changed. The Muslim forces prefer a strong central government to the division. And in a letter to a British newspaper, the leader of Bosnia's Serbs also calls the proposal unacceptable. The Muslim army launched a fierce counterattack against Serb positions in eastern Bosnia today. Belgrade television reports the Bosnian army could not drive back Serb fighters despite an all-out artillery, infantry, and tank assault. Serb forces have moved to within 2 miles of Srebrenica, which is filled with Muslim refugees. For the second day, Serbs stopped a UN convoy from evacuating sick and wounded refugees. The 8-ambulance convoy is stuck on the banks of Serbia's Drina River for now. But peacekeepers plan to try again tomorrow to reach the enclave. In Russia, signs are emerging that violence may be the only way out of a bitter power struggle between President Yeltsin and hardline adversaries. Yeltsin came in for a day of scathing criticism as an emergency session of Congress opened today. Afterwards, his spokesman warned Yeltsin was ready to take emergency action to save his reforms. In Red Square, several hundred communists protested against Yeltsin. They carried banners and flags showing support for hardline lawmakers. Federal investigators have reportedly found evidence the World Trade Center bombing was financed from abroad. The New York Times reports the FBI suspects an international group recently sent money to the 2 men charged in the attack. Agents say at least $8,000 was transferred from Europe to a joint New Jersey bank account. The account was used by Mohammed Salameh, arrested last week, and a man the FBI tracked down Wednesday. Charles Feldman reports.
The FBI moved in at dawn in full riot gear. Bulletproof vests, rifles at the ready, bomb trucks standing by. Their target, this man, a 25-year-old chemical engineer, Nadel Ayad, now an American citizen, although born in Kuwait with family roots on the occupied West Bank. He is a Rutgers University graduate who works for this chemical firm, Allied Signal, in its developmental laboratory.
By his educational background, he has certain expertise that lends itself to this kind of a crime.
Investigators now believe the bomb that rocked the World Trade Center was a homemade explosive that may have been assembled here at this storage warehouse in Jersey City, New Jersey.
Investigators believe materials used in the explosion were stored at this facility.
When they raided a storage locker Friday night, agents found bottles of nitric acid and a bomb fuse and a witch's brew of other chemicals. The FBI says the one man it arrested earlier, a Palestinian immigrant, Mohammed Salameh, made numerous trips to that warehouse the day before the bombing and used a payphone there to call Ayad's office at Allied Signal 4 times. Salameh was not the only person coming and going at the warehouse.
There were several names on the list for approval to enter and exit the storage facility.
The FBI says Ayad and Salameh are friends, and it suspects, although it cannot yet prove, that Ayad went with Salameh to rent the van, which investigators say was used in the bombing. After dark, through the door, Ayad's brother said the family is shocked.
The only thing that he did wrong is be the suspect's friend.
One intriguing new fact surfaced in these court papers today. The FBI says Salameh and Ayad shared a joint bank account, and they were not alone as banking partners.
There were several names on the joint account.
But the FBI was mum about who else or how much money or where it came from. It did say this much about the case.
We believe that there were other individuals involved, and we are endeavoring to identify them.
Our sources say more arrests are coming, but not expected within the next few days. Charles Feldman, CNN, Special Assignment, New York.
And Headline Sports is up next.
This is CNN Headline News.